Hi there, and welcome to onlinebookreview.org. I am your host, Stacy Cochran, and I am thrilled to have online with us via Skype video call Cayla Kluver, who is the author of Legacy, which is going to be coming out this fall through Amazon Encore. Thanks very much for joining us, Cayla.
Yeah, you bet.
Well, I want to ask you a couple of questions about the book to get us started here. Legacy sounds like just a great romantic fantasy novel. How did you first conceive of the character Princess Alera?
Well, really, the book started out as a way to tell the character of Narian's story. That was my original idea, was just kind of his story arc. And so Alera was created to tell his story. So really her purpose to begin with was just to be a narrator. But then as I started writing her, a lot of myself got poured into her, and as all my friends say, she is my older sister. Actually, the main character is a couple years older than I am, so a lot of people think that must have been kind of strange to write, but actually she's based in large part off of my older sister, who just thinks it's hilarious to read, and be like, yeah, that's exactly what I would say. So.
How do you feel about the character now that you've seen her in print? Are you pretty satisfied with the way that you conceived of her?
Yeah, actually it's interesting. The first couple, I did a first draft obviously of it, and a couple subsequent drafts. And Alera, in some parts, wasn't coming across as, right the way I wanted her to. And so I rewrote some scenes and stuff. And now, with a lot of my friends who have read it, they say that she's their favorite character. So I think definitely a lot of work went into that character, and she turned out right. I'm really pleased with that narrator. So
very cool. Now, what did you enjoy the most about writing Legacy?
I really enjoy creating characters, kind of romantic relationship tension, I guess. Probably my favorite thing to write is arguments. I don't know what that says about me, but just kind of quick dialogue. Dialogue is, I think, kind of my writing strength. I have more trouble with description, but dialogue comes very easily to me.
Well, I imagine there's a lot of energy when you're doing the writing and there's some sort of tension or anxiety or disagreement between the characters, and that kind of propels the scene forward a little bit more.
Yeah, it's definitely faster writing when you've got that kind of tension going on.
Very cool. Now, who do you count as some of your influences? Who do you like to read? Who do you like to watch on TV?
Well, there's so many authors I admire, first of all. I absolutely love Philippa Gregory. I think she has one of the most distinct voices, completely inimitable style. I absolutely adore her work, and I love Libba Bray. Probably, if I'm being honest, my biggest influence in terms of the characters I create and everything is Joss Whedon, who created Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Firefly,
Sure.
some of those TV shows. Just because he has such a knack for creating characters, and particularly strong female characters. I don't think I've ever seen any other female characters like he can write them.
Very cool. That's a
He
great
portrays
example. Yeah, and he's just quite the artist. He's just an excellent filmmaker, and definitely got a start on TV. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm interested. You've written this book that's set in a medieval setting. What kind of research did you do, if any, to kind of ground the setting in a very credible way?
Well, I mean, first off, obviously Legacy is a fantasy, fantasy kingdoms and everything, so there were liberties taken here and there. It's not completely historically accurate, but there's definitely a lot of research that went into it, because it's not per se high fantasy with elves and dwarves and that sort of thing. I definitely wanted it to have a historical medieval grounding, and so there's a lot of research done just online. I went to the local Borders store and bought some books on life in medieval times, day-to-day life, like fairs and tournaments in that time period, their language, just the way they would speak. I do pretty much with every word I use. I'm not sure about the origin. I'll look it up and see if it fits into that time period, if they would have had this word. For all of the outfits that they wear in the book, I did a lot of research on the clothing and on how houses were built, what they were made of, just like the size of cities and that sort of thing, distances they could travel on horseback.
What was the most interesting? What was the most interesting thing that came out of some of this research for you?
Well, I think a couple of the most interesting things were just the way females lived their lives. They really did not do much. They would do embroidery, kind of sit around and look pretty. I mean, they really, really did not do much. Some music. And another interesting thing was they actually had some forms of indoor plumbing, even in medieval times, which I found very fascinating.
That is fascinating.
Yeah, you wouldn't think they would have been, I guess, that developed.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, you know, I'm fascinated, of course, and a lot of people are going to be at your age. I should say that I met Christopher Paolini about, I don't know, it was about a month after he had been published, way back in 2003, and I was just struck by his poise on a panel. He was on a panel with Terry Brooks and a couple of other sort of legends of the fantasy genre. What would you say motivates you? What drives you as a writer?
Oh man, I've just been writing forever. I mean, I always tell this story that when I was in second grade, we were learning about firefighters, and so I was like, yeah, you know, I want to be a firefighter, and I went home and I wrote a story about being a firefighter. That was just the way I dealt with that feeling. Writing has always been the base of everything. For me, it's just such a, it's a thrilling mode of expression. The feeling I get when I'm writing, I can't describe it. And I get really grumpy if I go a long time without writing. Sure. So what drives me to write is just a need to do it. So I've just always expressed myself that way.
That's a great answer. So basically, if you're not writing, you know, you get kind of anxious, irritable, grumpy, as you said. And
oh, yeah. I'm not much fun to be around.
And I had read on, I think it was on your website or on a blog, perhaps, that you actually wrote your first story when you were 2. Is that right?
Yeah, I don't really remember it. That's what my mom says, but apparently it was about bunnies or something. And I dictated, and my mom wrote it down, then I scribbled my illustrations. So, yeah, it's floating around here somewhere.
Well, it might be worth $1 million one day, you know.
Yeah, I'll sell it off.
Well, tell us a little bit about the Encore program. I know there's a lot of chatter and buzz on the blogs about it, and folks are really excited about it. Now, I should introduce again, for folks watching at home, this is Cayla Kluver. She's the author of Legacy, and your book is going to be, Cayla, published with Amazon Encore. Tell us a little bit about Amazon Encore.
Well, first of all, I mean, it's been so exciting, and it's such a great program, great opportunity for writers and readers. It's just a different way of discovering books, and in my case, I wasn't having much success being discovered traditionally, just because of my age and a lack of credentials and that sort of thing, and I couldn't get a literary agent. And I don't fault that system for not discovering me, because I can understand why they would be hesitant to look at something a 15-year-old had written. And that was one of the frustrating aspects of it, was that I could see both sides of the coin and understand them. And Encore has just given me an amazing, amazing opportunity, and working with them has been an absolute pleasure. And they've just gone to such lengths to get absolutely the best design work, and editing and everything has just been fantastic with them. Now, I just think it's an amazing program.
What was it like when you discovered that they were going to publish the book? What was the process like? How did it feel? I'm sure you were ecstatic.
Yeah, it was, you know, it's interesting. I was out in Seattle, and I met with a lot of the people who were working on the Encore program, would be working with the book. And that's where I actually signed the contract, and it was really, really exciting and surreal, because this had been a dream of mine for so long, and it was so exciting. I got home, and I was really excited with my sisters and talking about it, and you know, we went out to dinner with a bunch of friends and everything, and then it was like 2 days after I got home, after we'd signed the contract, and about 2 in the morning, I just sat up in bed, and suddenly it hit me. It's like this dream, this far-off thing that I'd been fantasizing about for years was actually coming true. And I had kind of a little panic attack, actually. It was like, what is going on? Can this actually be happening? It was a little bit of, this is my shot, you know?
Sure.
And I'm just blessed to be surrounded by the right people and the people who are going to make sure that this works out well for me. I just said I woke up at like 2 in the morning and I went and I found my mom and I was like, Mom, what's going on? How am I going to do this? Because I'm 16 years old. I'm actually really naive in a lot of ways about how all this works in the business world, and I've kind of been thrust into it a little bit. So, like I said, I'm really, really blessed to be surrounded by people like my mom, who's a lawyer, and she knows how all this works, and my agent, who is just fantastic.
Well, I think that's a big part of it, you know, is having a good, supportive, loving environment around you that can really ground you when, you know, if it does take off the way that it did for Christopher, it can be kind of crazy. There's a lot of interviews you have to do, a lot of fans.
Oh, I know.
It can be a lot of fun too, I think as well. But
I think you have to look at it that way too. It's just a lot of fun.
Yeah, and definitely having a good group around you. It sounds like you've got, you know, a great support system, which is really important. But that segues into the literary agent. Now, a lot of the folks who are watching our video on YouTube and such are aspiring writers themselves, and they want to know, you know, how to get a literary agent. Can you talk a little bit about the process, or how you actually landed your literary agent?
Well, I mean, to start off with, we self-published, my mom and I did. Because I was having a lot of trouble, like I said, with credentials and that sort of thing, landing a literary agent or publisher traditionally. And actually, we were contacted by Amazon Encore. And at that point, I decided to try again to get a literary agent, because obviously I don't know much about publishing contracts and that sort of thing. And that goes for my mom as well. And so we contacted Kevin Lyon, who's my literary agent. And we were really, really, really fortunate that we ended up with her, because she's just phenomenal. And it was interesting too. I felt really like I was ending up in the right place, because when we contacted her, she's not a hungry young agent. You know, she's not going to snap up just any project because there's a potential offer there. She still wanted a chance to look at the book and see if it was something that she herself would really get invested in. And she took the time, and I remember we exchanged some emails, and then we got the phone call that she'd read Legacy and really enjoyed it and wanted to represent me. And that was thrilling. That was really one of the things that made it become real for me, I think, just because in this publishing process, getting literary agent is kind of your first step. And that was a thing I had been struggling for before we decided to self-publish, and then I had one. Wait a minute. How did this happen?
It's amazing, and it doesn't sound like it could have happened to a better person. You must feel just awesome about it at this point, and are looking forward to the next few years.
Oh, definitely. I mean, there's an element of what's going to happen. I have no idea kind of what I'm walking into. I feel at this point like I'm in a little bit of a bubble. I don't really know what's going on in the world with regard to, I stay away from Googling myself, that sort of thing. Sure. And I'm just waiting. The book hasn't been released yet through Amazon Encore, so.
Well, let's talk a little bit about your writing process, kind of focus back onto the book. For folks watching at home, the author is Cayla Kluver. The book is Legacy, which will be coming out here in 2009 via Amazon's Encore program. So let's talk a little bit about your writing process. What times of day do you write the best?
I write most commonly from about 10 p.m. to 4 in the morning.
Wow.
Actually. I'm a night owl. Yeah, I tell my friends, and they're like, yeah, I went to sleep at like 4, and they must think I'm a party girl or something. Not at all. It's just because I'm writing. And I think I got into that habit because I was writing Legacy while I was still in high school. And so I had school all day, and then homework I'd have to do right after school. And so I just started writing at that time. And, you know, you have to talk to my mom. She's the one who had to drag me out of bed in the morning. But, yeah, I don't know. When I got into that habit exactly.
But definitely the graveyard shift is your best time for writing, it sounds like.
Yes. Yes.
So how long did it take to write Legacy?
It took me about 9 months to complete the first draft, and of course this was when I was in high school as well, and I was doing plays and like solo ensemble competitions and choir concerts and just a whole bunch of busy stuff going on. So yeah, 9 months to complete the first draft, and I actually worked with one of my English teachers in an independent studies with some of the editing my second semester of my sophomore year. And then it was another 6 months, I think, to do revisions just for a self-published version. And that was a lot of work. I actually, you don't realize your first time through how much work revision is actually going to be. But it was just as hard as the initial writing, if not more so, because you're kind of going back through and tearing your baby apart, as it were. So.
Absolutely. And now, were there some revisions after the self-published book had been out before you got picked up by Amazon, or did you tinker around with it at all then?
Well, we did, like I said, revisions, obviously, between first draft and self-published version, and then we did some revisions after we signed the contract with Encore. Nothing too major, just clean up here and there, kind of cosmetic editing, making sure everything flowed. There were some things that I myself wanted to change, even after we published it, and then Amazon Encore just kind of gave me an opportunity to do that.
Now, do they actually have an editor or somebody like a developmental editor that you're working with to revise it, or how does that work?
I have an editor at Encore, and copy editors, and it's very traditional, just how it works. They've got themselves set up very, very nicely over there.
Fascinating. Now, do you outline, or do you kind of write from your imagination, just straight from the cuff?
Well, I'll oftentimes start a project just, with an idea or something, kind of a feel for how this should be, and I'll write maybe 20 pages, and then I'm like, okay, I need an outline. I like to tell people my first story before I wrote Legacy was 11 pages long, or my longest story, I should say, before I wrote Legacy was 11 pages long. And I just remember writing that story and being like, yeah, 11 pages, that's a ton of work. And then I went on to write Legacy, and the difference was that I had a complete outline for Legacy. I knew going in how I wanted it to begin, kind of, like I said, I had the Narian arc set up, and how I wanted it to end. And then I just filled it out and had a complete outline. So I'm definitely an outline writer. I need to know what I'm doing.
Very cool. Now, the second book in the series, this is a trilogy, right?
Mm-hmm.
The second book is Allegiance. What can you tell us about Allegiance?
Well, interestingly, Allegiance and Legacy, it was originally laid out as to be one book. And it was going to be too long, so I cut it right in half. So Legacy and Allegiance are actually exactly the same length. I have the manuscript for Allegiance, first draft completed. And as of right now, they're exactly the same length. Allegiance continues. Legacy, literally, I think a week after Legacy ends. So it's pretty seamless going into the second book. In terms of differences between Legacy and Allegiance, Allegiance it's a little darker, faster paced, there's more action. I think I had an easier time writing Allegiance, actually, just because I knew the characters so well already, and I knew it had to happen, and it was really just quick writing. But yeah, there's a lot more going on in Allegiance.
And now you have a third book, too. Has it been titled yet? Have you completed it?
Redemption. Redemption is the title of the third one.
And what's the status?
I have not completed it yet. I'm getting there, probably about halfway through the first draft. It's interesting, I started the third one kind of before publicity and that sort of thing started out with Legacy, so it kind of got pushed to the back burner a little bit for a while. But I'm getting back into it now and restarting the writing process. So.
It sounds exciting, and I'm sure readers are going to totally embrace it. I bet you're excited about it as well.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited.
Okay, and now I've got a couple more questions here to sort of conclude things. What advice, of course, our audience for these videos it's a lot of aspiring writers. It's folks who have maybe self-published a book. some folks who are trying to decide whether to self-publish a book or whether to use a traditional publisher. What advice would you give to aspiring writers in our audience regarding whether they should self-publish or try to go the traditional route and find a literary agent?
Well, that's a tough one because it's so dependent on the situation. I mean, for me, self-publishing was a very good, very viable option because I was legitimately not having success. The other way, self-publishing takes a lot of work if you are hoping to get a broader audience. I don't know, that's a really tough question.
It kind of depends on each author, I suppose.
Yeah, it really does.
And in your case, it sounded like, you know, self-publishing the book actually was a major catalyst towards actually getting some positive reviews, getting it out there, and then it was discovered through this Amazon Encore program. Now, that's not going to happen for everybody, of course, but...
yeah, and that's the risk you take. Self-publishing, if you're hoping to get a more traditional publisher, is will that happen? And that was definitely a risk my mom and I took in self-publishing. We just really took a leap of faith, and I'm so grateful to my mom for being willing to take that risk. And she was working 2 full-time jobs promoting the book, and she had a regular day job too. She's a university professor, so you know, it takes a lot of work, but you know, if you're willing to put it in, it can pay off.
That's exciting. Now, where can folks go to find out a little bit more about you, about Legacy, and the future books? Where can they go to find out information?
Well, I have an official website, which is www.caylakluver.com. Otherwise, Amazon has an author page for me. The detail page for the Amazon Encore edition of Legacy has a little video with me and my older sister just talking, and we're planning on doing a couple more of those, just kind of a series, I guess, of goofy little videos. Yeah, I think those are kind of the main sources.
Awesome.
Or just Google me.
Or just do a Google search, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, Cayla, I want to thank you very much for chatting with us here at Online Book Review. And for all of us here at the Online Book Review, I am your host, Stacy Cochran, and we've been chatting with Cayla Kluver. She is the author of Legacy, which is the first book in a trilogy that is going to be coming out here later on in 2009 through the Amazon Encore program. Thank you very much for watching this episode. Thank you.